Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another installment of Friday Q&A. Thank you so much for your questions. As always, if you've got questions for the next Q&A, please feel free to ask me anything you like. Before we get going, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're going to be in Melbourne or Sydney between March 6th and 13th, Ragdoll are going to be doing some shows on the East Coast. We're doing Melodic Rock Fest on the 6th and the 8th of March. We're also supporting Kip Winger in Melbourne on Friday the 13th of March, and we will have another Melbourne sideshow and a Sydney sideshow tucked in there. They will be announced hopefully in the next week or so. If you're in Perth, we are supporting Kip Winger March 16th and XYZ as well, which I'm super pumped about. You know, they were a great band who I believe were super underrated back in the day. So if you want to come down to that, I will put information to all the ticketing stuff and the events in the video description below. And a shout out to Christy, who has just arrived in Australia. Hope you're having a great holiday so far. And I'm hoping the jet lag does not get you too badly, especially if you're just watching this right now. So welcome to the country, right in time for Australia Day. So let's get into those questions right now. And in the spirit of Australia Day, I was asked about some of my favorite current Australian guitarists. I've been asked this question before, and I kind of give a different answer every time. But if I had to narrow it down to three Aussie players that I am really digging at the moment, I've mentioned him before on this channel, Stephen Taranto. You don't know who this guy is, make sure you're sitting down when you go and check out his playing. Just next level, on top of next level chops, and really creative lines. Just the most ridiculous guitar technique I've ever seen in my life. And I follow him on Instagram, and just about any time he posts a lick, I sit there and I spend about 15 minutes trying to figure out, you know, the first 3 seconds of it. And I found that by doing that, that's actually a great little workout there. Another guy I would highly recommend checking out, because I've been digging a bunch of his music, is James Norbert Avenue. James Norbert Avenue. There you go. I don't know why I didn't get that one out. Another guy that I follow on Instagram and just love his playing. You know, I always talk about the stank being a really important thing, and you know, he plays a Sir and a Friedman, and I think he's using a Fractal as well, and just totally up my alley. And again, supreme chops, great writing, a lot of really cool ideas, a lot of cool lines and stuff like that. So if you haven't checked him out, please go and check his stuff out. And even though it's not one player, I would recommend going out and checking out the Australian band Bad Moon Born. Voya and Ned are both great players, and they write some of the thickest riffs out there. Really great band. I would highly recommend checking them out. We played with them a few years ago in Sydney, and they just keep getting better and better and putting out really great stuff. So if I had to recommend 3 Aussie guitarists or bands to go and check out, do yourself a favor. This is kind of in the rock metal sphere, I guess, which I'm guessing a lot of people watch this channel for. So yeah, go and check those guys out. They're amazing. On the topic of Australia, hang on, I have to play a chord in between this. Mystical intro music for Australia. Do we get Kangaroos in Perth? Forget who asked this one, but like, Perth isn't teeming with kangaroos. It's a city. It's, I think, over 1.2 million people or something like that live in Perth at the moment. But you definitely get kangaroos in the greater Perth area. Not too far from where I am, there's a national park, which actually was affected by bushfire recently, and I haven't been up there recently. I'm hoping to go up this weekend if it's reopened, but you can go there around dusk, and there are just kangaroos everywhere. It's pretty amazing. And yeah, they're wonderful little creatures. You do get some just absolutely monstrous ones, like the big red kangaroos, I think, which are more in central Australia, are huge. Like, they'll mess you up. You would not want to tangle with one of those things. But yeah, we do get kangaroos in Perth. Kind of they're everywhere in this country, and they're kind of a hazard. They're like Australian deer, basically. You know, you've seen the meme, the T-Rex deer, and a lot of the time if you're driving, and we've had this so much doing regional gigs, you're driving back from a gig and the side of the road is just teeming with kangaroos, and you have to be really careful when you drive, because if they hop out in front of you, you do not want to hit one of those guys. Obviously, because you don't want to hit them because they're a gorgeous kangaroo, but they'll absolutely mess you up as well. So yeah, we do get kangaroos in Perth. Is there any more Australian related questions here? I'm looking down at this piece of paper. I'm trying to do this all as one take. We need a chord for the next one. What's a cool chord? Here we go. This is an Echoplex emulation in the Axe Effects as well. I'm really, really digging it. Neil Peart. Really, really sad news. I did a live stream the day the news was announced that he had passed away, and you know, I don't normally get too affected by prominent figures who pass or anything like that, but as so many of you who watch this channel, I mean, Rush and their music, and I think from a lot of the stuff they put out recently, it seems their qualities as human beings, and especially Neil as, you know, a lyricist and an author, and, you know, just seemed like that uncle that you might see once every 5 years, but when you do see him, you just have the best time with him. And yeah, I was upset because Rush have been and continue to be a massive part of my life, and I got to see them once in 2015 in Dallas, and you know, it was just one of those shows where it lived up to the hype for me. I remember when they played Subdivisions, which is one of my favorite Rush songs, and it was a moment. You know, when you have those moments at concerts where even though we had pretty rubbish seats, we were right up at the back of American Airlines Center, it felt like you were there in front of them experiencing it just up close. It felt like hearing the song for the first time. So yeah, it was sad news. Sad news, as so many of you out there I'm sure feel the same. It really, really got to me, and I've been listening to a lot of Rush, needless to say, and they are a huge inspiration on what I like to do. So yeah, Neil Peart, rest in peace. This is one take, so I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but somebody asked about the Canadian band Triumph, who I really, really like. I think Rick Emmett is an incredible player, and I've got a bunch of old guitar player magazines from back in the day with Rick Emmett on them. And I remember reading them when I was a teenager. I was like, who on earth is this guy? And then listening to Triumph and being like, it's Van Halen Rush. I get it. I have a pretty... they've got a live album where he does like a 10-minute solo in the middle of it. And I remember being on tour once in the States because, you know, there's like 50 million different FM rock stations out there, and there's digital radio as well. And they played this Triumph song, which has the guitar solo in the middle. And they did the whole thing, which would just never happen here in Australia. So yeah, Triumph, excellent band, just class. You know, the Canadians do it well. We played a gig last week, and I was speaking to someone who was Canadian, and it's like, you know, Triumph, Big Wreck, Tea Party, Rush, Pat Travis, all these Canadians absolutely just killing it and putting out great stuff. So yeah, I definitely have a soft spot for some Canadians out there. Canadians are like, you know, they're the Atlantic Australians, I guess. That would be one way to describe them. All right, what next? Let's talk about some gear. I'm going to change a sound. I'm going to go to a ridiculous lead guitar sound because I'm going to talk about some gear. So obviously it was the NAMM show recently, or the NAMM show, however you like to say it. Lots of cool stuff announced. The Rev G20 looks amazing. I was watching the Premier Guitar demo of that. Shout out to Kyle out there if you happen to be watching this as well from Rev. It's good to see you back out there, man. And it sounded amazing in the demo that I saw. And like, you know, a lot of Premier Guitar stuff, often it's not mic'd up very well or anything. And, you know, it is what it is. And then put that together with the fact that it's a trade show. But the audio on it just sounded incredible. It had a really unique kind of texture. And I noticed that with the Rev G3 and the G4 for distortion pedals. They're incredible, but they do have this really cool character about them, which I don't think really sounds like anything out there at the moment. So I would love to try a G20. It looks like a pretty amazing thing. And if it sounds anything like that video, I think I'll like it a lot. The other thing that was announced that I didn't get a chance to chat about, or maybe I did. I can't remember if we mentioned in the video, but on that note, the Torpedo Captor X looks sweet. I was watching some videos on that during the week, and A related question to that we can segue into, why do I use the Fractal X-Load and not the Captor? I bought both of them, and for me, the one feature with the X-Load that I liked more than the Captor was I just preferred the sound of the actual reactive load and the fact that it's switchable in there. That was the main thing, because there's a US and a UK voicing in there. And the US voicing is really good with like high gain amps. No, the UK voicing is really good with high gain amps, and I like the US voicing kind of for more Fendery stuff. So that was literally the only reason, because it has one more switch in there, and I think I just kind of like the quality of the reactive load. But the Captor X looks pretty specced out, like the IR loading in it and the headphones and all the other stuff that you can do with it. It just seems really, really well thought out. It's kind of that in between their Captor and I guess their Torpedo Live, or what's the other one? The Studio, the reamping one, something like that. So yeah, you can't really go wrong with either of them, because they work great. And the fact that you can tame a 100 watt amp and record it DI and listen to it through headphones, pretty amazing stuff. What a time to be alive, right? My quarter tones video, there were a bunch of really entertaining comments on there. A lot of great feedback, which I was surprised about, because when I put it out, I was like, I've just ruined this. You know, everyone's going to laugh at me. But there was one comment along the lines of, yeah, there's a reason quarter tones aren't more prominent in like the dominant form, or the dominant way of playing scales, or something like that. The dominant way of playing scales. Oh, Dad. But keep in mind that, I mean, whatever dominant form of music means, but keep in mind, like, quarter tone music is really common in a lot of Indian music and like Hindi pop music. There's something like 1.3 billion people live in India alone. And I guess in the greater Middle East, it's probably close to like 2 million people. So looking at it through the lens of like rock music that is popular in the Anglosphere, you don't really get that kind of thing there. But, you know, there's a lot of other people living on the planet enjoying music. And those kind of things are really valid forms of expression. It's not even about, you know, who cares, as long as you dig it and as long as it's expressive. So that's probably something I did need to add to that video that I haven't addressed here. So yeah, if you didn't see that video, go check it out. I think there's something in there for everyone, hopefully. Oh, I love the way this thing sounds. It's so good. My favorite Led Zeppelin album. This is a killer question, because I obviously can't answer all of them, because, I mean, let's face it, is anyone's favorite album In Through the Outdoor? There's a couple of cool songs on there, but yeah. Almost every Led Zeppelin thing they did is absolutely killer. I know that's heresy in some parts. But for me, the Zepp stuff, which really resonates, I love 3. That was my introduction to a lot of, I guess, what you call exotic tonalities when I was younger. But I'm a Physical Graffiti guy. There's so much great stuff on there. And obviously, Kashmir is on there. Obviously, you got songs like In the Light. Is In the Light on that one? In the Evenings on the other one. In the Light, that's a killer, killer riff. I love that. Custard Pie's great. The Wanton song. It really ticks a lot of boxes for me. Even songs like Down by the Seaside. I just love that album. So Physical Graffiti for me, probably because I'm totally greedy, but anything up to then, I really like Presence as well, because it's got Achilles' Last Stand on it, and a couple of other songs on there. Yeah. T for One, is that on Presence as well? Killer. Yeah, so I'm pretty much, it's hard not to like Led Zeppelin, I think. But yeah, Physical Graffiti. Houses of the Holy is really close, because it's got No Quarter on there, which is probably my favorite Led Zeppelin song. But other than that, yeah. And I got to see the Physical Graffiti building when I went to New York, so there's that as well. I'm super biased in there. So yeah, Physical Graffiti, my favorite Led Zeppelin album. I mentioned my favorite Australian guitar players. Am I still using my AX8? I am. I used it last weekend. I use it for a lot of my acoustic stuff because of just the form factor. We were talking about the fact that Ragdoll's going over to Melbourne and Sydney doing some East Coast shows. There's a high possibility I will take my AX8 for that, pending luggage requirements and stuff like that. I'm tossing up between doing that and making it like really, really easy, or making it a similar amount of easy, but slightly more convenient and taking the 3 over. We've got to do a couple of acoustic gigs while we're there as well. So I'm leaning towards the AX8 just because it's got the easy access to the looper and it's a slightly quicker on and off than the 3, but with the 3 we can run bass as well. So I don't know. And everyone's also going to ask, when is the FM3 coming out? Apparently, I saw a post on the forum where they're expecting it should be literally in the next week or 2. So if that happens and you're on the FM3 waiting list, I really hope your name comes up super, super, super quick, because it's going to be incredible. You can have an Axe-Fx 3, all those tones in a super compact little package. It's going to be amazing. Pumped. Glad that it's coming out. So yes, I am using the AX8 still. Let's see. There's a couple more questions I didn't get to. Are there? No, I think I'm out of my list. So there you go. If you guys have any questions for next week, and if you liked this format for the Q&A, let me know. I'm not totally sold on it either way. So I'm just going to play a little bit of guitar for you guys, because I feel like I've done a lot of talking this week and not as much playing, and sometimes it's just good to shut up and play your guitar. So I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and thank you for watching the Q&A as always. I will see you next week.